Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second CTIS Bitesize Talk on the initial clinical trial application. My name is Sarah Scales. I'm a Change Management Officer here at EMA, and I want to first introduce the concept of the Bitesize Talks today. Then I'll explain a few housekeeping rules for the session before introducing the CTIS experts who will be presenting today. So, on the concept of the bite-sized talks, each bite-sized talk covers a specific CTIS functionality. And as seen on the agenda slide here, the CTIS experts will present the functionality and demonstrate it in the CTIS application. Throughout the session, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see a few housekeeping rules. So first of all, we will be using Slido, as we typically do, to collect questions for this event. Here on this slide, you will see how to use Slido. You can go to www.slide.do and use the event code March24. You can also use the QR code that you're seeing on your screen. As you may know, we will take the most popular questions first, typically. So if you go into Slido, do feel free to ask questions, but also use that thumbs up button to like questions that you would like to see answered, and that helps us to see which questions are most popular. We would ask that you please keep questions focused on the CTIS initial clinical trial application so that we can answer it best, and questions on the clinical trials regulation or national processes and best practices will be out of scope for today. So we might, say that certain questions are out of scope if they are. We also have noticed that some people may have issues viewing the little video box screen on the event page. If you see that screen as blurry, or you can't see the details very well, or you experience some other issue, we would advise you to read the instructions in the grey box below the video on the event page. Within that little grey box of instructions, you will find a link to watch the live broadcast in full screen mode. And you can also increase the video quality by clicking on the HD button. So I would now like to introduce our speakers for today. Haralampos Drosos, who goes by the name of Babis, is a CTIS Change Management Officer and leads various training activities, including the production of CTIS training materials. Laura Piopo is a scientific officer in the CTIS program, working on CTIS development and including leading on data protection and training of the CTIS community on system functionalities. So I will now hand over to Laura, who will take us through the first part of our session today. Laura, over to you.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Sarah, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Just to, before we start with the demo session on the system, if we can go to the next slide, just to give you some context on what will be presented today. We will be talking about initial clinical trial application submitted via the Clinical Trial Information System, CTIS. You can see in this slide the different components of an initial application, and we will go through each one of them during the demo session. With this slide, we can also see on the right-hand side that once submitted, an initial clinical trial application can be modified. And you can just have a flavor of the modifications of an application that can be done during the clinical trial life cycle with a substantial modification, non-substantial modification, or via adding a member state concern. Of course, RFI responses are also a mechanism to modify an initial application during the evaluation phase. If we can go to the next one, please. This is really to show you the various sections, the different components of an initial CTA. The form section is the very first at the top of the list on a CTA dossier, is the section where the sponsor can provide cover letter, can provide proof of payment, but is also critically important because it's the section where the categories of the trials are selected, as well as the proposed timelines for deferrals. You might know now from all the training material and the documents published on the EMA website that it is possible for the sponsor to request a delay for the publication of data and documents, and this is really defined at the time of populating the form. The next one is the member states concerned section, which allows the sponsor to choose the member states concerned where they intend to conduct the trial. That can be mononational or multinational. And then we have the two parts, part 1 and part 2, extensively described in the regulation, and specifically the content of the documents and the data is defined in Annex 1 of the regulation. As you know, the part 1 is the one that is subject to joint evaluation, joint assessment done by the RMS, the reporting member states, in collaboration with the other member states concerned, and pertains to scientific documentation review like protocol, investigator brochure, IMPD documents, and so on. Part 2 is really assessed nationally. It contains documents such as informed consent, recruitment arrangement, and the review of these Part 2 documents is pertinence of each individual member state concerned. Towards the end of this talk today, we will also cover the evaluation section and the timetable to give you a flavor of the type of information that can be accessible from these two sections in the dossier. So briefly going to the last slide that we have, the next one, please. Thanks. This is really to remind ourselves of the functionalities that are implemented in the system that can be used when populating an initial application as well as other applications in the system. The check button is available to allow the user to verify if all the mandatory fields, the mandatory documents have been completed. Otherwise, a red box will appear. Save functionality allows the user to save the draft CTA and make it visible only to himself or the colleagues in the same organization that have the same profile as the user. Cancel functionality allows to delete and cancel an application prior to submission. And then the final step is, of course, the submission button. And this allows the user basically to submit the application and make it visible in the authority domain. So with this, maybe we can stop sharing the presentation. Thank you. And I will share my screen if I can be the presenter. Thank you very much. And guide you through. I hope you can see now correctly the secure domain. We are in the landing page of the secure domain for the sponsor access, the sponsor domain. So I will log in. We are in a test environment, of course. And
apologies, Lara, if I can just interject to say that there may be some issue with the IBM full screen link on the event page. So I have just added the link as an announcement on Slido. From there, you'll be able to watch the full screen link. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And I hope you can see for the people that manage the full screen, and this is clear. So once the user logs in into the secure domain, basically I will use the clinical trial. Yes, for the demo today, you see I've run the search using the EUCT number, and the system retrieves the clinical trial application with for the CT number used for the search. Clicking, there is only one application, an initial application for this trial. Clicking on this hyperlink of the initial, directly addressed into the structure of the CTA. So the first element I was mentioning before is the form section. And please, let's remind ourselves that in order for you to be able to modify any of the components of CTIS, you will have to click on the padlock. This has been implemented with a possibility to avoid the possibility that different users having the same profile and potentially working on the same clinical trial can work simultaneously in the same part of the application. So by clicking on the padlock, basically you are making the section only accessible to yourself, and another colleague will get an error message that is not possible at that moment to access the section. So the cover letter, as you can see in this case, we have two documents uploaded in the CTA, and allow me to say just a few words on the importance to have protection of personal data in the system as a responsibility of the users by having the possibility to upload a version for publication of a document, such as the cover letter, and a version not for publication. If personal data are required of the sponsor, user details, or even a signature, although there are, of course, now discussions on the need to have signature or not for the cover letter as well as other documents. If needed, these will have to be provided in the slot not for publication. The version for publication should be fully anonymized and without personal data. It's important to emphasize the use of this plus icon, because by clicking on the plus icon, you have the possibility, and maybe now we can select a document, you have the possibility to upload a document version not for publication. So here we can say document not for publication. And you can also see in the document type. So by performing this action, basically you will have the possibility to disclose personal data if needed only in the secure domain, and have an anonymized version of the same document subject to publication. The proof of payment is a section for requirements of payment that still remain purely a national decision. The compliance with the regulation is a statement to be provided by the sponsor to clarify that personal data, if available in the CTA, have been treated in accordance with the requirements of the GDPR. And for this, we are planning to produce a template, a statement template, and publish it, because we often get the question if a template is available to be used. The deferral category, the deferral section, as I was mentioning before, is really important because allows you and gives you the possibility to choose the trial category depending on the phase, on the development phase of the trial. So you can choose between category 1, 2, and 3. And you can see that if you choose category 1, of course, you will have a set of data and documents for which publication can be deferred. You might notice that the main characteristics, the notification, and the summary of results in this phase 1 trial are grayed out and cannot be deferred. And this is because the trial is including pediatric population. So we will see more details when we go in the part 1. If we were to remove the pediatric population, or if there was only a population on adults, then it will be possible also to apply deferrals for these other documents. Of course, if you select a category 2, you have less options for deferral, and even less if you choose a category 3. Let me now navigate briefly to the Member States concerned section. That is the one where you can specify the Member States concerned where you intend to conduct the trial. This is a simple mononational trial in France, but if you are going to add another Member State by clicking on the lock and adding new Member States, then you will have to specify, let's choose another trial, another Member States, who is going to be the RMS. So the sponsor can make a proposal on the reporting Member States, but then the final decision, of course, is with the Member States concerned for the application. I will now move to part 1, and part 1 is made of 3 individual sections, one on clinical trial, one on sponsors, and one on product. So I will cover the first part on the trial, and then my colleague Babis will cover the product part and sponsor. You can see that there are different components, different elements under the clinical trial section, which you can always populate by clicking on the padlock. You can provide the full title of the trial as well as a title that is understandable to the public, so this should be in lay terms. You can provide the protocol code, and you can provide translation of each of these fields. You see it's possible to click on the button Add Translation. The same functionality is available for the documents uploaded. In the trial information section, you can specify the trial phase, if the trial is a low interventional trial. Please consider that if the trial is an integrated phase, so phase 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, for example, when it comes to the deferral, the highest category should be chosen. This is also a question that we get quite often. So if your trial is a phase 1 and phase 2, then category 2 should be selected when it comes to the deferral. And if your trial is a phase 3 and 4, then in that case, category 3 should be selected. So this is just to give you some example on the principle. Regarding the medical condition, all the fields that you see with an asterisk are basically the mandatory fields for completion in the system. There are a trial objective, a trial scope, and a list of values that are displayed. You can do multi-selection, main objectives, secondary objectives for the trial, inclusion and exclusion criteria. Another question that we get is what is meant with principal inclusion criteria. Of course, this is just to say that if the list of inclusion or exclusion criteria is long, just the main one, the principle, will be included, but then of course the protocol as a document should contain the full information. Briefly on the endpoints, primary and secondary endpoints is also available as structured data, and this is the age range. So as I was saying before, because this trial contains pediatric population, when it comes to the deferral for category 1, there are some restrictions. If you select pediatric population, then there is a further granular list, and you can select the values. You can also specify the population, if it's female or male, and if it's patient or healthy volunteers and vulnerable population. You see, is really with a list of values that can be selected. On the protocol, there is a section for protocol and a synopsis. If both documents are uploaded, then the publication will occur at the same time. There is a section for study design and period for the different period details to be included, as well as the arms detail. Finally, before I stop for the Q&A session, I wanted to show you the scientific advice placeholder, the placeholder for pediatric investigational plan, and this section on associated clinical trials. This allows you basically to create a link or establish a link to another trial where, for example, the same product has been used and the same documentation like an IMPD, for example, has been provided. You can associate a trial authorized under the regime of the directive, so with a UDRAC number, or a trial authorized under the regulation. And I think we can stop maybe here for a short Q&A before we continue with the demo on the sponsor and the product section. Thank you very much.
Many thanks for that, Laura. And we will be using a slightly different concept than usual for the Slido questions today. You will see the Slido questions on screen. It shows the most popular ones, and our experts can pick the questions they wish to answer from there. So please, Laura and Babis, go ahead.
Sarah, I'm having some issues with my Slido. Could you please pick up like the first questions together with Laura?
Yeah, maybe I can take one. I was going now just through the list. I don't know how many thumbs up there are, but maybe something that has not been mentioned during the demonstration, so we can clarify. There is a question on the download, whether it's possible to download the draft application, and the answer is yes. The download functionality is available when the application is in draft. Of course, what you will be able to download is what you have populated at the time, as well as after submission. Of course, it's also possible to use this functionality. How to decide in which category your trial is, this is really related to the phase. And to have some further guidance on this, maybe you can consult the Transparency Addendum, the Appendix on Disclosure Rules. That is a document published on the European Medicine Agency website, has been endorsed by the Management Board in 2015. So this document is quite detailed on the deferral aspect and the categorization. So if your trial is a first-in-human, a phase 1 trials, bioequivalence, bioavailability, or biosimilarity, then would fall in category 1. If it's a phase 2 or 3, is a category 2. And if it's a phase 4 trial, then category 3 will apply. This is just to give you a flavor, but I would advise to consult the Transparency Addendum. There were some questions, Sarah and colleagues, I think at the beginning with some thumb up on the issue that we had on the visibility. Right?
Laura?
Yes, Babis.
Just one question, because it's quite relevant to the part that you presented. So, if you create a draft and you cancel your trial, will you, I mean, this number, this clinical trial number will disappear and will be available for future trials?
No, every time that you create an application, then a new trial number will be generated. So there's always a possibility while you are working on your application, if you decide not to go ahead, to cancel it, but then you will not be able to create a new application using the same trial number. Every time that you create a new application, a new UCT number will be generated.
Thank you very much. And also, there's another question, if it's possible to download a PDF to review the draft submission.
Yes.
So
yes.
if your trial, yes, exactly. I mean, if your trial is still in draft, still you can download the data that you have created before the submission of your trial. It's possible.
Indeed.
There are like some questions also. This is like a nice question, like some member states, they require from sponsor users for a prior notice if they are selected to be the proposed RMS. CTIS does not support such a prior notice. I'm scrolling down the questions. On the cover letter, should there be a signature?
Yes, no, thank you. This I was briefly mentioning. So there are some discussions also at the level of the European Commission that will provide some further guidance on the need for signed documents, because the regulation per se does not really call for the need of having a signed documentation. So it should not really be strictly necessary. And there should be also an harmonized approach of the member states in deciding a signature should be requested or not, depending really on the document type mostly. What is important to emphasize is that if really the signature will be considered needed in some of the documents, then the signature should go in the document slot, not for publication. There was a question, maybe we can quickly have a look. The CTIS does not have any section to indicate the ethics committee of reference per country that will evaluate part 2. How the competent authority of each member state will be informed about the ethics committee that will evaluate the part 2 for each country to release the unique approval. So the question is how the competent authorities of each member states. So everything that pertains to member states organization should really be done outside of the system. So the regulation is clear when it talks about member states issuing a single decision, and even the access to part 1 documents or part 2 documents and the users, whether they are from NCAs or ethics committee and which ethics committee to involve, is all done outside of the system. Then the access to the documentation and evaluation will be based on the profile that the users will have. But this question, I don't think is really related so much with CTIS functionality, because somehow there is a need for an exchange of information outside of CTIS between NCIs and ethics committee.
Laura, there is another question, and this is related to transition trials. So for approved studies that are submitted through CTIS as a transition trial, is it required to update the protocol to comply with the format and the content requirements of the CTR?
Yes, that's a good point. And of course, the transition of a clinical trial from the requirements of the directive from UDRACT to CTIS should occur only once the requirements of the protocol, once the sponsor has basically an harmonized protocol, because any national requirements, there should be an harmonized version of the protocol that then is applicable to all the member states concerned. And in that case, this is the version that should be submitted at the time of migrating the trial from UDRACT to CTIS, then for the member states to review and to have access to it.
Thank you, Laura. And I'm scrolling the questions.
Maybe there is a question on translation, I see. Just if
Sure.
we can scroll down. Sorry, I haven't seen the whole text. Part 1, will translation of documents be mandatory, or English will be accepted by all the member states in a multi-study? Will this depend? Yeah, exactly. Article 26 of the regulation clearly specified that is a member state's concerned decision to choose the language of the documentation that they wish to receive. And I think there is also an intention to have some clarity to be provided by each of the member states in the EU and EA area about these requirements. So there is not a common, let's say, an answer that is applicable in all cases, because according also to the regulation, there is the possibility for the member state to ask to have documentation submitted in a specific language. I see, Babis, that there is a question with quite a high number of thumbs up, and is about a transitional trial. Maybe we can read this together.
Yes. It's like the very first one, okay, about the notifications. So, like a user has created the transitional trial, and there is a field, of course, over there about estimated recruitment start date. It's a mandatory field. I can't put a date in the past. Which start date do I have to indicate in this field? I think the user refers to that field in part 1. And I think, Laura, that they can just add like just a random date there to fulfill
Yeah, because this is maybe something that from the development point of view we might have a look at, because if the date is in the past, because the trial of course has already been authorized under the regime of the directive is ongoing, and the date is in the past, it seems that there are these validation rules preventing the user then to put the date retrospectively, and the date can only be entered in the future. So I would say enter the day when the CTA is completed, or a date in the future, and then in the relevant documentation that you provide, still communicate to the member states the details on the recruitment, basically. We will need to look at this one. I just wanted to take it because I could see that there are quite few thumbs up. So the feedback would be provide a date that is in the future if there is no workaround and the system does not allow to enter a date in the past. And thank you for raising this.
Yeah, I think, Laura, that they can just put like a random date there that the system allows them to do. And when is the time for them to submit the real notification? Over there, there is no business rules that restrict them from selecting past dates, okay?
In the notification section.
Exactly.
Yes.
I think there is freedom for the users to select past dates, but for this one, no worries, there is no like some sort of bonding rule that will restrict your future actions. You might select just a random date to fulfill the minimum requirements for the submission of your trial.
To progress with the submission. Thank you, Babis.
Laura, there's the second question, but I think this is for IMPD. Maybe we can keep it for later for the second part of the demo.
Yes, it's about investigator-initiated trials and the IMPD and the cross-reference. Indeed, because Babis now will navigate us through the product part. I think it's nice.
There is another question, and let's pick it up. It's about the maximum size of document. Indeed, right now the maximum size of each document is limited to 10 megabytes, but of course, and this might be increased in future. I cannot give you right now a timeline for that, but as an alternative, you can upload multiple documents in each placeholder. So if your documents, the document size is more than 10 megabytes, you can just split your file and upload 2 or 3 or even more documents on that placeholder. Laura, do you have any timeline regarding the increase of the size?
No, it's basically what you were saying, Babis, that this is the situation for the time being is 10 megabytes. Multiple upload is possible, but is in our radar to increase this. I cannot provide more specific timelines. Briefly, maybe before we move to sponsor and product section, there is a question keeping in mind that the one on the IMPD that we can see as 24 thumb up, we will take it afterwards, just to say if there is a way in which a table of content of the pack can be downloaded. There is no such a feature as table of content. What you can download, again, for the draft or for the submitted application, is a selection of structured data and or the documents in PDF, and then you will have the individual document that you have provided downloaded, as well as a compilation of the structured data. But there is no table of content. Let's say the structure of the download is equivalent to the content of the CTA. Maybe Babis will stop here for the Q&A, just to keep the time for the demo, and we keep in mind the question on IMPDQ.
So do we move with the next part of the demo?
Yes, please.
Okay, just give me 1 second to start sharing my screen. So I will open the clinical trial that Laura used a few minutes ago. And I think Laura had finished the part 1. So let's move now to the second section of this part 1, the section for sponsors. I will use the padlock to open it. And just below, on top of this section, you can see this gray ribbon. On the left side of the ribbon, you can see the details of the sponsor that are listed. On the right side, you can see empty fields for the various contact points that we need to add. If you hover your mouse over the labels, you will see also like a basic, like a short definition of each contact point. If here, like you can see also the button, this grayed out, that button allows us to add the contact point for union. This is an additional contact point that is required, and they have been populated here. Of course, you can edit the fields by removing values, adding values if you need. In order to populate now the additional contact points, you need to click on this gray ribbon. And maybe you noticed that there was like an instant change on the interface. We have some new fields that appeared, and also this blue button. This will allow us to add the contact points. The mandatory fields here is the scientific contact point and the public contact point. So by clicking on that, you can see here that we have the option to add the various contact points. I will start with the mandatory ones. Scientific. I need to click on this gray ribbon, and of course I need to populate the details here. Now, if it happens that the contact details of the scientific contact point are the same with those from the public contact point, I can just tick in that box. Here below, the contact details are repeated for the public contact point. Again, if you feel that is not correct, you can just use the button remove here. In addition to those are the mandatory contact points. Users can also add legal representative as well as third party. In case now that the sponsor assigns various tasks to a third party, a CRO partner, you can add also the details for this third party. In the same way, you need to retrieve your data from OMS to find this organization. And as soon as you do that, you will be able to add the contact details. In addition to contact details, in this field, you will be able also to indicate which tasks have been assigned to the third party. Scrolling down now, we'll see the third section of part one, that for products. In the same way, I will need to use the padlock button. And as soon as I do that, I'm having two buttons, add and register. Register is if I need to register like a medicinal product, and I will be redirected to the medicinal product dictionary. With the add button here, I can add the roles of my trial. You can see below that two roles have been populated, placebo and test, and of course I can add multiple roles. By clicking on the button, besides the placebo and test, of course, you can add comparator and auxiliary. As soon as you populate your roles, you can expand the section for each role. We can start from the role test here. And there is another new add button that allows us to add the medicinal products under this role. You can already see that a medicinal product has been populated here. And of course, we can add more products under its role. If I click on the button, as you can see, besides the authorized products on top, I can add also authorized ATC and authorized substance, as well as unauthorized products, development products. Let's see how it looks like if I try to add a second authorized product. If I click on that, a search form pops up. It includes various search fields, as you can see. I can use any of them. The more I use, the more I narrow down my scope and the less the results that I regularly retrieve. Here, the search functionality gives me some flexibility. I can use also some filters. For example, if I'm not certain for the name of the product, instead of starts with or equals to, that they are sort of restricting, I can use contains as some sort of wildcard. The same principles can be seen when you select to add an authorized ATC or substance. What might change is that the search fields might be less or might be relevant to that particular types of products, but it works in the same way. The unauthorized product now, it's a bit different. I will click on that. As you can see here, you need to populate two codes, the EUMP number and the EU substance number. You need to have the exact codes. You cannot use, as you see here, you have a fixed filter equals to. You need exact match. You cannot use a partial code. It won't work. And unless you have the exact codes, you won't be able to retrieve the unauthorized product. Now, in order to have those unauthorized product codes, you will need to take them from the company. You need to be an employee of this company that owns those unauthorized products, or somehow to collaborate with them and take that information from them. You can find those codes somewhere like in a public domain. Scrolling up a bit, we saw what you can see under the test role, what type of products you can populate. What is a bit different is for placebo. I will expand the placebo role. And of course, we have again here the add button. It works in the same way. I will be able to use various search fields and retrieve products from the medicinal product dictionary. But the system allows me also to insert some basic information manually. So instead of retrieving my products from the medicinal product dictionary, I can use this field here. You see that the button here is deactivated. So as soon as I start typing something, the button will be activated. And by clicking that, I'm adding the details here. Now, below that, you can see also some placeholders for document. The mandatory one is this under the tile placebo, in which you need to populate the IMPD document. again, another thing is that you can also, not you can, you need actually to click on the ribbon that includes the details here. And by doing that, sorry, I can do that like for the product below. By clicking here like the ribbon that includes the details of the product, it takes some time. You see here that we have some additional fields that just appeared. Some of them are mandatory, some others not, but it will allow you to add details regarding this selected medicinal product. Besides that, you can see also at the bottom of these tiles that you have also a tile that is dedicated to the devices that are associated with medicinal products. I think that there was a question on slide regarding this. If you expand that tile, you can add the device that is connected to your product. You have some fields. For some of them, you have some pre-populated values that you need to select. So you can select whether it is a combined integral or combined not integral. And of course, also additional fields about the type of the device. And then from the device trade name and below, you will see some free text fields that will allow you to type the details of the device. Besides that, here what I would like also to show you is that as soon as you finish with the details of the medicinal product, you will be having a set of placeholders in which you will need to upload documents for the role, for all the products under this role. And you can see that you have investigator brochure for medicinal product, compliance with GMP for the medicinal product, and also you have the IMPD quality and IMPD safety and efficacy. In case here that you do not upload any documents for the IMPD quality and safety and efficacy, here it's empty as you can see. If, for example, those documents have been submitted in past with a different clinical trial, the system allows you to use this free text field, add your justification, what is the reason for not uploading the IMPD relevant documents, and of course here you can make reference to the trial that the trial with which the same documents have been submitted in past. Of course, as soon as you upload all your documents in this part, you can see them also listed here in the end of the page. Then next, we will pass to the part 2. So in part 2, as you can see, below you have the member states that have been added to this trial. We have Bulgaria and France.
Babis, sorry, it's Laura. Maybe before we move to the part 2, we do like a 10 minutes Q&A on the part 1.
Sorry,
to address some of the points, I think, because there were some questions on the IMPD-Q and so on. Would that be okay if we take some questions on the part 1? Okay, Vicky, will we have the questions on the screen? Maybe we can have a look. We can go through the list.
Laura, can I take just one question? I think I'm not sure if you have responded to that. If it's mandatory to upload for each document, one for publication and one not for publication?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I mean, I guess this depends on the concept. The system allows you to add multiple versions of the same document. The very first document, as you can see here, and we have the example here, is for publication. But if it's required to upload also a document in which you will have removed any personal information, any confidential information, then you can use this feature here, add, not this button, this one.
Babis,
Babis, you are not sharing.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me. I cannot share my screen. I think you need to make something on the settings.
Let's try now.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen.
Yes.
I'm sharing my screen.
Now it's coming. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. So what we were saying is that if I find one of the products here, for example, like the very here you can see actually that the first document here is for publication, but of course you need to be sure that this document does not include some confidential information, any personal information, because those will be published. In case it's necessary for the assessment of the trial, to include also the document with the full details, including also personal information, confidential information, you can add a second version of the same document here by using this button, the add button, not the add document. And then you can place in the placeholder a second document. I will just grab one. And as you can see here, it's already visible on the label of the document that is not for publication. And by attaching that now, you have the same document in two versions. One that is for publication does not include personal or confidential information. The second one that is not for publication, it's the full version of the document that is needed for the assessment, and it might be including also confidential information. Those won't be published. So the system gives you the opportunity to upload documents not for publication or for publication. The very first always by default is for publication. And according to the concept, according to the document and the needs, you can make use of it or not.
Thank you, Babis. I think it was very good that you opened the system again to show this plus icon, because it's really the functionality that gives the possibility to users to upload the version not for publication. And as Babis was saying, really the emphasis is on the fact that you do not always need to provide for all the documents a version for publication and not for publication. Depends on the content, as Babis was saying. The purpose of having a version not for publication is because there might be personal data in there or elements of CCI that will not be addressed with the deferral mechanism. Maybe if we can have the questions, if Babis stops sharing and we have the questions on the screen, we can, because there were some questions that are basically all related. So Babis was addressing the question, is it mandatory to upload for each document? Okay, now this has been addressed, and just to say that the answer is no, it's not mandatory in every instance. Yes, Babis, you are going to say something?
No, Laura, it's for the next question. I think we answered that during the meeting, during the demo, excuse me, that the sponsor, the only way to find the codes for unauthorized products is only if he works for the company owner or if he or she collaborates with that company and gets that information. There is no other way to find the codes, right?
Yes. Yeah, indeed. This was more for the product part. If I can stay just 1 second on this concept of version for publication and not for publication, because it's really linked with the very first question that we see at the top, that is about the redaction guideline that EMA is drafting. Just to close, not close, clarify some of the points that are raised in this regard. So timelines for the publication of the redaction guideline is going to be beginning of April. We are aiming for a publication before probably the Easter break, and this EMA document on protection of personal data and elements of CCI will be then available for public consultation. So it's going to be a draft version of the document that we will publish, and this is a document where you can find more details on how to protect personal data, how to protect CCI, clear reference to the fact that you don't always need to have two versions of the document, and really an emphasis on the fact that personal data should be kept to the minimum in CTIS, only when it's really necessary. Please remember that they should go in the slot not for publication. This is in line with the requirements of Article 81.4 that says that no personal data or CCI should be published. So I hope this clarifies the first point on the redaction guideline being available beginning or mid April. And then, sorry if I continue with this, but still there is another question on investigators and if it's needed to have, yeah, that one we can address. Thank you, Vicky. Is it required in our country to have a curriculum with certificates of the trainings and qualification of the investigators? Does all these documents needs to be uploaded into version? Again, depending on the information that is needed in the member states, if you really need to provide details on personal data, they should be in the CV, eventually not for publication, but please consider that the name and the surname of the PI, of the principal investigator, are in any case published. So when it comes to the curriculum vitae of the principal investigator, if there is reference to any other personal data, this should be redacted, but really the name and the surname of the PI are in any case available, and this is in the public domain, and this is in line with the transparency rules of the transparency addendum. So sorry, I wanted to take the question on data protection aspect because I've seen that there were few together. Thank you, Vicky. We can close that one also. Babis, you have addressed this one on the unauthorized product, right? Before, how can the sponsor get? Just to repeat, I think once more your answer on this because it's maybe important for the users. How to get the member states, sorry, the medicinal product code, and that is the product EV code and the substance EV code. Can you clarify, Babis, once again, so we make it very clear?
Yes, like again, as I said, like the only way to find those codes is if you work for that company who owns those products. The company that creates development products, the company needs to register them in the medicinal product dictionary. And to that stage, when the product is still like an authorized product, those codes are visible only to the company owner. So either you work for the company owner and you have access, or you collaborate with them and somehow those details are communicated to you. You cannot find the codes of unauthorized product somewhere published in a public domain.
I think is really very clear. Basically, there needs to be an exchange outside of CTIS, as Babis was clearly explaining, between the sponsor populating the CTA dossier and the company that has registered this product in XCVMPD. And there is no way to have it from public domain or from the system. So you will need to have an agreement in place, basically, to exchange the information. Thank you, Vicky. We can close this one also. I think maybe we can take the IMPD, right? That was the very top. We had 27 thumbs up. So this is about a new trial for the IMPD, quality and safety and efficacy. We would like to work with a cross-reference letter. Is that possible? And if yes, how? So I think Bobby's show. Bobby, you want to take this one, or maybe we open the system again, or clarify verbally, because you have explained how.
I think Laura, Vicky will give me like now will allow me to share my
Presenter.
screen,
Yes,
and I think it will be much easier to see that on the system itself.
perfect.
And of course, you may expand to that. Just a moment. Take some time until I share my screen. So we saw that in the product. So if I open the role, as we said, below each role you will find placeholders for the documents for the IMPD and the IMPD safety and efficacy. If you don't upload any documents because you might have submitted already exactly the same IMPD related documents, you will be able just to omit that step and just you need just to add to use this free text field and add the reason for not uploading, for not submitting the IMPD related documents. I think that's what they mean by saying cross-reference letter, right?
Indeed. And as the IMPD document has been split in two sections, we have the quality and the safety and efficacy. It's not possible to have like a mix and match. Either you upload the document under safety and efficacy, and there is a document also uploaded under the quality, Or, as Babis is showing, you provide a justification for no IMPD. That can be also that the document has been provided, for example, in another trial and can be accessible to the member states from the other trial. You provide a justification in the section. But then the justification basically field will have to be completed for both the safety and efficacy placeholder and the quality. Thank you, Babis. I think it was very clear with the system open. Maybe we go back to the list of questions before we continue in 5 minutes. I think at 3 o'clock with the part 2. Thank you, Vicky. We can close. I think the first one hopefully is clear from what Babis was showing in the system. Then there is another question again on personal data of the CV of the PI. Is possible to have a version not for publication? I think this we covered from the explanation. Then why isn't it possible to use file names with dots? Many file names have version number. Okay, Babis, you want to take this one to explain how the version number can be explained, or even the use of the comment box when the documents are uploaded to address?
I think again, like we need to make to share my screen again, and we will see that easier on the platform. So I think. So as you can see, I'm again like in this. I'm just selecting one random placeholder to upload the document. Click on the Add Document button. I will select my document. And before you upload it, in the placeholder, you have some fields in which you can use and add some details. You can see already here like version 1 with an asterisk. This is like an internal reference, so you can add here like a value that makes sense to you. It's a reference, your reference. And next to that, you have the system version. 1, 2, 3, according to how many versions you might need to upload during the life cycle of this clinical trial, the number of the version might be increasing. As soon as you do that, of course, you have another field for comments. As soon as you attach the document, you will be able to see here in this label, this is the reference that you added, some internal number of the document possibly, and this one is the system version. And this, of course, will be an increasing number according to how many versions of this document you might need to upload during the life cycle of this trial. I think it's Laura, something to add on that?
I think it was clear, Babis. Thank you.
There's like a question from a user if we can upload the screenshots from documents. I guess you can add the documents in your Word document that can be uploaded on the system, but I'm not sure if I don't think that you can upload such files, snapshots.
Okay, I think we have taken this one and the next one on the dot in the format, and Babis has shown how the system version and the addition of comments can also be used. Maybe we pause here because we have taken already a few questions. Babis, would that be okay if we now navigate through the part 2?
Of course.
Thank you.
I'll start sharing my screen again then. So back to CTIS now. We finished with part 1, so we will move to part 2. Click on the section. Below part 2, you can see the member state concerned that have been added to this trial. We have Bulgaria and France. In France, I think we have already populated some data. In the same way, you need to click on the padlock to make the subsections and the fields editable. And then on top, you have like structured data in which you need to populate the details of your trial site. Already, you can see here on the left half of this ribbon that the details of the site have been populated. and on the right half side you can see the details of the investigator. You can use, of course, the bin icon if you want to remove it. You can use the add site if you want to add more sites on that. You must have seen this search functionality, which allows you to search for organization data in OMS. And as soon as you find your site, you can select it and populate it in this area. Then, once you add your site, you can always populate the details of the investigator. In our case, the details are here. We can edit them by using the pencil icon, and all those fields are editable. It's worth mentioning here is that there is a specific field, department, and here you can capture locally the department for which the investigator is working. Do not expect that you will find such details in OMS, but still you can capture that detail here locally in CTIS. Below, after populating the details for the site and the investigator, you have different placeholders for the documents that are required for part 2. The first 6 are mandatory documents. And what we should say always here is that for some of those documents, you might need to upload the documents in local language. For example, the subject information and consent form, this is a document that it might be required to be uploaded in local languages. The first one here is in English, and as we explained previously, each placeholder can host more than one document. In that case, since you need to add, if we assume that we need to add the document in local language, in French, you can just click on the Add Document button, use the additional placeholder that appears here, select your document, and of course, as we said, here you have some fields in which you can provide additional information regarding your document. We saw previously the version, but here what else might be quite useful for you is the language. From this drop-down menu, you can select EU languages. And of course, you have also the comment field in which you can add some additional details that document is provided also in local language in French. So here, the authorities will be having access to both documents, one in English and one in French. I think that as it concerns part 2. Should we go to questions?
Thank you, Babis. Now, while you are with the system open and sharing the screen, maybe if you scroll a little bit up, just to emphasize probably what is already well known, the fact that CTIS really work with standardized data, and when it comes to retrieving product details, we get data out of XCVMPD, and when it comes to retrieving organization details like the one of trial sites or sponsor details or CRO, this is all taken from OMS. So this is just to put a bit of emphasis on the fact that in order for you to be able to search and select and find the details of the site, of the hospital, this should be available in the organization management system, and then can be basically populated in the application. OMS is a system that has been live now for a few years and is the central repository for organization details. And when a new site or a new organization is registered, the valid supporting documentation should be provided to have a successful validation done by the OMS team. And there is extensive reference to OMS requirements in our training material and in the OMS, in the SPOR, let's say, page on the EMA corporate website. This is just for the site details, and then as Babis was showing, the rest is a compilation of documents. One of the questions that we get very often is how can I provide documents per site? with the functionality that we have implemented so far and how Babis is showing, this is not possible to basically group all these documents together per site. You provide the documents per member states in the member states slot, let's say, but it's always possible when a document is uploaded. And thank you, Babis, for pointing at the subsection for each of the member states concerned. For each of the document, you can populate in the comment section if you need to provide additional details. Now, Babis is showing with a pencil. This is the comment box that is available for you. So just to emphasize, because it's a question that we get sometimes, it's not possible to segregate and group the documents per site details, let's say. Okay, maybe we can take some questions from the chat. Babis, if you stop sharing, I don't know if Babis, Vicky will put Slido on. Thank you. So there was this question, it's quite popular. We were informed that if 20 sites were submitted in part 2 and 3 sites do not fulfill the qualification recruitment according to the ethics committee, then the complete application will be rejected. Okay, once that you submitted an initial application, basically you have the possibility to modify the application prior to publication via the means of RFI. So in case the sites are not suitable or there is an exchange with the member states, I'm really talking now in terms of system functionalities. You can always delete the site. There is always the possibility for you, while the evaluation is ongoing, to delete. Then more on the if this is suitable for rejection, approval, when it comes really to the evaluation phase, I think member states are in a better position to clarify some of these points. But when it comes to the system functionalities, what maybe I can clarify is that it's possible to delete documents, it's possible to delete the details of the sites if there is an RFI, of course, raised for that part of the dossier. Whether this would imply that the whole application is rejected or not, I think member states can clarify better the consequences. But in theory, the dossier can be updated based on the request for clarification that you might get from the member states, and you can delete and modify. Then maybe I will skip the question on the we are not planning to create a Q&A with a question, relevant question maybe raised in this event, but maybe other colleagues can also clarify on this. We have extensive training material, and there is a Q&A that has been produced already by the European Commission that is available on EUDRALEX. I don't know if colleagues on the line would like to expand.
And the session will be recorded and will be uploaded in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure about the timeline, but
perfect.
Our colleagues will let us know.
That's a good addition.
If I can also come in on the point of a Q&A document with the questions and answers, indeed there will be a recording so you can see the questions that have been answered in this session. We always get more questions than we can answer. We see the big popularity, and we are putting on more Q&A sessions soon to deal with that. I'll tell you a bit about that at the end. The questions that do and don't get answered also inform our further development of the training materials and the FAQs there. So that's always a good source for your questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Babis, maybe this one, will it be known which countries require prior notice to be the RMS? Example in the guidance document list. We can address this one. Although
Laura,
it's more for the member states.
Yeah, I think I mean, I don't have that information, and of course, we can bring that question up to the appropriate panels.
Yes, exactly. This is more for the member states. Prior notice, basically, when you are proposing a member state to be the RMS. Yeah, I'm also not aware of more. Okay, I think maybe this one just disappeared from the screen, but just to mention that you can always make a proposal when you submit the application, and then the RMS selection is something that is agreed by the member states concerned within the 6 days defined in the regulation. But we are not aware of a list or more information on prior notice being required by some member states. Babis, maybe you want to talk more?
Laura, just to add also that we cannot, I mean, there is no way that such prior notice can be sent via CTIS.
CTIS, exactly.
I mean, that must take place outside CTIS if it's required.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you. Okay, ethics committee for Spain should be defined by the sponsor in the cover letter. This is of high relevance, and I guess it's the same for other member states. This is indeed a good feedback from Spanish colleagues. Maybe not so much a question on the functionalities, but thank you for this. So I think we can close this one and the one on prior notice. Yes, one word about the IMPDQ of not authorized product. Maybe, Babis, we can have a look at this, how to submit an IMPDQ for a not authorized product if a trial of another organization when a cross-reference is not possible. Basically, it's all on the role of the users have. Babis, would you like to comment on this, or I can expand as you prefer?
Would you mind to take it up?
Yeah, I think it's just to say that when you are including in the IMPDQ a document that basically the documentation will have to be provided by another party, it all comes to the roles that are assigned. Basically, the administrator of your organization should assign the role of IMPDQ a preparer to the party that will be responsible for the submission of the document if it's something that is not in your possession. The IMPDQ, as we were saying before, is either a mandatory document to be uploaded or there can be a cross-reference. In case the cross-reference or the justification field that Babis was showing before is not possible, then in the system there should be an IMPDQ document. And this IMPDQ is to be provided by a user with a specific role, that is the IMPDQ preparer. So it's possible that the administrator assign the role of IMPDQ preparer to another party, and this would be responsible then for the upload. What I want to emphasize is that it would not be possible otherwise to progress with the submission of the CTA. The principle is the same if it's an authorized product and a not authorized product. There needs to be either the IMPDQ documentation or the justification field populated. Okay. Informed consent English master version is mandatory also for national study. I think everything that pertains to language requirements, member states requirements, national requirements, all this I think is better to clarify with the member states experts as well, because we can comment in terms of system functionalities. As we were showing, you can upload documents in any of the 23 official languages. You can upload documents in English, but of course, for the informed consent, there will be a version for the local language. This is possible in the system. You have no limitation, but on the requirements per member states, maybe is better to check with the competent authorities. Babis, would you like to take other questions from the list before we move to RFI and evaluation? Maybe a couple of questions that you have seen.
Yeah. Like what documents are mandatory for part 2? The first 6 documents on part 2 are mandatory. If you expand the tiles there, you will find the asterisk, and this indicates that this field is mandatory. It is the recruitment arrangements, subject information informed consent form, suitability of the investigator, suitability of facilities, proof of insurance cover or indemnification, and the last one, financial and other arrangements. There are like 2 other placeholders, but those are not mandatory. The system won't prevent you from submitting your trial if you let them empty.
Thank you very much, Babis. Then there was this one again. Can you reconfirm what was mentioned on the deferrals? Can maybe take This one, I think, was about integrated phase. Basically, if the trial is phase 1 and 2, then this will fall under category 2 and not category 1. Yes, that's correct. Okay, in the interest of time, because I think we have 15 minutes, maybe we can quickly navigate through the evaluation part, or yeah, then if there are other outstanding questions, we can take them at the very end. So please bear with me while I find the trial number. Oh, Babis, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it's a question like it's a bit lower, possibly. That's why we cannot see that in the screen. Is it possible to upload a zip folder with the documents? This is not possible. But if you download the data, you will download a zip folder that includes all the uploaded documents. But you cannot upload the zip folder. Laura, there's another question. When acting as a legal representative for a sponsor outside the EU, how would this look in CTIS? Again, I think this is quite similar question with what Laura explained previously. In order to have visibility to specific clinical trials and areas, you will need to have the appropriate roles. Just by adding a company as legal representative in your contact details, this does not give to this company the right to access your clinical trials. You need to ask your administrator to assign specific roles to the representative of that legal representative company.
Thank you so much, Babis. Then maybe I'll quickly share the screen for a few minutes to show you what you can see from the evaluation part from an application. So, okay, I share now. Okay. Can you confirm that you can see correctly this screen, hopefully? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Vicky. So I've selected a clinical trial that has already been authorized. The one that we were using before was in draft. So being in draft was still a work in progress, and the sponsor was populating the content. In this case, the trial has already been submitted, and the evaluation has been done by the member states concerned. So I just wanted to say, because we were going through this part, that from the evaluation section, basically you will have access, very important, to the RFI. In addition to receiving notices and alerts, you can see the content of the RFI from this part, and I will show you in a minute. On the conclusion, so if the validation was finalized, and when, and the outcome, if the dossier was complete and in scope, like in this case, everything in order. And then part 1 and part 2. So it's really just to mention that you as a sponsor, because you see I'm still in the secure domain of the sponsor, can have access to the part 1 final assessment report and the part 2 final assessment report, as well as the conclusion from the evaluation section. So in this case, okay, there are no RFIs, but if I click and expand on the conclusion section, I can see the outcome, acceptable, the date, and then the final assessment report, part 1 for quality, and the final assessment report, part 1, except quality. So everything that pertains to safety and efficacy and other elements, but not quality. The same, let me collapse this and expand part 2. Assessment report part 2, I can also see the final document. Of course, the sponsor has visibility of the final documentation submitted by the member states concerned, and you can also have a nice overview of all the steps in this assessment table. And you can also have then, if there are deferrals for the sponsor document, the member states, this is also important to emphasize, can at the same time request deferral for their documents, meaning assessment report. What I'm showing you now is with a trial that does not have any deferral, so everything is published at the time of the decision. But if there were a deferral for protocol and investigator brochure and IMPD, then the member states would also be able to set deferral timelines for their assessment report. And the same principle, of course, is valid for RFI. for the responses to the RFI provided by the sponsor and the RFI that are sent to the sponsor to address. So this was from the evaluation section. Now I'll take another trial that is still under evaluation to show you the RFI very briefly before we conclude. So I'm clicking yes on the clinical trial tab and including a UCT number. This trial is still under evaluation. And as a user, basically I can see if there are RFI from the evaluation section. You see no RFI at the time of validation, but there are RFI for part 1. So this one is still to be addressed. The due date is at the end of the month. I can see that is for the initial application, and basically from this section I can, as a sponsor, provide documentation on the changes done to the application, if this is applicable, additional general documentation or in relation to quality. And then you see this is how an RFI is presented, basically with considerations that have been consolidated by the member states concerned. For part 1, of course, is the RMS consolidating the consideration. So as a sponsor, you can click on the lock and then you are able to provide your response in a free text. You can also provide supporting documents, but in case you need to modify the dossier, please note that this is not really the section where you have to provide the new version document for the dossier. This will need to be done by modifying the application. I also wanted to show you the notices and alerts, just to briefly remind the fact that users will receive notices every time that an RFI is raised. This is really your tool to keep track of the RFI being raised. This is part of the assessment of an initial application, but maybe not so much in scope of the presentation today. So I will stop here in terms of RFI, just to mention basically what you can see from the evaluation section and how the information will be accessible to you. So maybe I stop sharing. And Sarah, do we have time for some final question and answer, or is time for the remarks? Please
I would
let
say
us know.
just a couple of questions, and you can leave me maybe 3 minutes at the end to close.
Perfect.
Very accurate of me. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. So with this, really, we have concluded the demo of the system and what we wanted to show you with Babis. There are some questions. I don't know, Babis, if you would like to take any of the one from the slide,
Laura,
we can go through together. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I can take the second one that we can see on the screen right now. When uploading a redacted document version for publication, does the sponsor need to justify each of the proposed reductions within the document? Again, I think this is up to the authorities to ask for more details or not. But in any case, as we saw previously, when you upload a document, you always have the comment field, and you can add more details there if you think that this will help the assessment of your clinical trial. But we cannot give you like right now any guidelines regarding this.
Yes, indeed. No, it's true. It's basically during the assessment, the member states may is all then will depend on the case and what the member states will do. Can provide some questions with a means of a RFI on the extension of the reduction that is done. But as Babis was saying, in terms of system functionalities, you can always upload a document and provide info if required in the comment free text box. Okay. Is there any guideline on how to name the files when uploading them? I think there were some discussion around this, but maybe not final guideline that we can mention or refer to. Right, Babis? There were some discussion. I think it's more for harmonization purposes. Maybe will be clarified by the member states or the Commission website. I don't think we have anything on this on EMA website.
For the moment, no guideline.
Yeah, but it's a point that has been mentioned, so is in our radar. I think also the level of the member states for the purpose of harmonization. So for the time being, to answer simply your question, no, there is no guideline, but is a topic that has been discussed. Then are patient-facing documents required for Part 2 limited to consent or recruiting material, who is also expected to upload any other documents that get handed? Yes, that's a good point. Maybe I can start on this one, and Babis, please feel free to complement. Basically, the content of the dossier and what you see in CTIS is really based on the requirements of Annex 1 of the clinical trial regulation. So the documents that the sponsor should provide are the ones that are required in the regulation. So this is part of the dossier. Member states in principle should not request additional documentation that is not foreseen in the Annex 1 content, but there can be a request for additional clarification during the evaluation. So also maybe for this we don't have an answer that is valid in every case. Will depend during the assessment, but the regulation, let's say, is very clear on the requirements of the documents that should be provided in CTIS and is defined in the annex. I don't know if colleagues would like to add on this.
Not from my side, then, Laura.
Okay. Thank you. This one for part 1, yeah, there are some discussion about the so-called partial initial, so-called partial initial. Although the functionality might be working, allowing the submission of part 1 only documents to all the member states concerned or to some of the member states concerned, please keep in mind that this would have implication later on for possible submission of substantial modification with the current implementation that we have in the system. So it's true that there are some discussion also around this, because with the current functionalities, and this is all very clearly explained in the Commission Q&A, with the current functionality of the system, if you were to submit a substantial modification, a decision in all the member states concerned would be required. And of course, it can take some time before you can submit the part 2 to outstanding to the member states and have a decision. So the preferred option, let's say for the time being, would be to submit the full initial application with all the member states receiving part 1 and part 2. And I would advise you to consult the Commission Q&A, because it's very detailed in this aspect, in what is currently implemented in CTIS, the implication in case of a SAM, of submission of substantial modification, and what will be changed in the future. Okay. Babis, would you like to take maybe the very last one? I can see Sarah, so we're approaching maybe the end of the session. Back to
Laura,
Sarah,
have you identified some specific question that you would like to?
Not from a quick scan. I think we have addressed the most popular ones, just in case you have spotted from the list something that you would like to address. Otherwise, maybe we can conclude.
No, I think we should pass to Sarah right now, because there are many new questions, but I haven't read them.
Okay.
But we read it just moments ago.
Great. Good timekeeping, Babis and Laura. Thank you very much to Babis and Laura for answering the questions today. And thank you to all of our attendees for attending this session and asking the questions and staying involved. So we have a post-event survey which is now open, and you can find that on the EMA event page, where you saw, the box for the live stream, the video box. So you can go there to tell us how you found today's event and help us to improve for next events. As mentioned during the session, a recording of the session will be available on the EMA website following the event. And the best way to keep up to date with when that is available is to sign up for the CTIS, or the Clinical Trials newsletter, as it will soon be called. And also the CTIS newsflash. So you can do that by emailing ct.communication@ema.europa.eu. That it is now ct.newslettersubscription@ema.europa.eu, which is the second line of the further information on screen now. As mentioned, we do see that there is a lot of interest to ask questions, and we are happy to see that from the audience. So we would like to remind you of some of the next events which will be happening and hosted by EMA on CTIS. Next week, we will be kicking off the CTIS walk-in clinics on the 28th of March. The walk-in clinics are similar to these bite-sized sessions, but the difference is that they are totally unscripted. There is no presented topic. It is an hour where users can come with any question on CTIS functionalities and get an answer from CTIS experts. So the same as with this sessions, we would like to remind people that questions on the clinical trials regulation or national processes are out of scope, but anything related to CTIS functionalities we are happy to take. And we also encourage users to check out the training materials and the supporting materials before coming to the walk-in clinics, just to make sure that you can get the most out of them and ask questions that are maybe not there in the training materials already. And there will be more walk-in clinics in April on the 4th and 22nd of April. You can find more details on the EMA website within the CTIS training and support section. The next CTIS Bitesize Talk will then be on the 28th of April. So thank you very much again for your attention. We hope you enjoyed this talk, and we look forward to seeing your feedback in the post-event survey. Have a good afternoon.